Jessica and I side by side here. I was just thinking that we probably don't need a lot of the features. We're not using a lot of Roll20 features. So it might be nice if we were able to just kind of sit back and roll dice and do that. But for now, I've got Roll20. I see that you're in the window there. I've already assigned a character sheet.
Okay. My name is Errol Edoof.
And you can edit that.
Oh. I think maybe I'll keep it. No, I probably won't.
So Kevin Crawford is an author of a bunch of different games, and one of the things that he does really well is he promotes the development of sandbox games. Are you familiar with that concept for either RPGs or video games?
For video games, I am.
Okay. It's very much the same concept as for video games. He provides systems very robust, if you want to use them, where you can develop kind of a map that hasn't been explored yet, factions that are out in that map, and as play advances, kind of behind-the-scenes rules where the factions are kind of competing for their own goods, their own goals, and the player characters, as they explore the map, they'll uncover bits of these moving pieces, and once they're interacting with the different factions, it really kind of drives. It provides a rich, kind of a target-rich environment for you to just pick and choose where you want to engage. And when you decide, I'm bored with this group, I'm going to go over here, there's something to do over there. It really keeps it from being too railroady, and then gives the world a dynamic feeling that if you choose not to stop the bad thing from happening, it's going to happen, and now you're going to deal with the aftermath. Right. Or if you do interfere with it, maybe you'll reap the rewards for that, but then also get the attention of like the people who wished it had happened. And really interesting systems. One is Stars Without Number, and that's for like spacefaring adventures. And one is God. Yeah, Stars Without Number is a lot of fun. And another one I really like, probably more, is called Godbound. And Godbound is designed. You're a kind of a demigod. You're like Hercules or Achilles, any of those characters who's kind of larger than life. And in Godbound, you specifically have some divine powers that are tied to like different words of holy ability. You can influence the sea or time, or you're a craftsman, or there's a bunch of really cool words that you can kind of build characters out of. Scarlet Heroes almost creates a demigod type of character because it's designed for a GM and one PC. The PC is more potent in a lot of ways than all the other people in the world, at least like the normal people, run-of-the-mill people. One way that we end up doing that is when we look at the character creation, while you're going to develop hit points, based on the class you choose. Let's say you're a fighter and you end up with 8 or 9 hit points. Other creatures, when you deal damage, you don't deal hit points worth of damage. You're going to deal hit dice worth of damage. So hit die is equivalent to a level, basically. So at first level, if you have 8 hit points, you're kind of doing toe-to-toe with almost like an 8th level character. At least in the sense that you can stand up against 8 first level characters as an equal. Like you can take out little mobs and things. There are some rules that I've put in the Scarlet Heroes, and I've created a brief rules sheet. I've just typed up a few things to go over real quick. I'd like to go over these, and then we can start talking about the campaign and character.
Sure. I'm getting that echo again, just so you know.
What's that?
I'm getting that echo again, just so you know. I don't want to that might be gone now.
Let me.
Yeah, it's gone now.
When I get too close, I wonder if it's echoing off my face back because my microphone's built into my camera.
Face.
Okay, I'll sit back a bit.
It didn't echo when your face was close that time.
So, a couple quick things on how the rules work. You're assumed to be more powerful than most people. You're assumed to be proficient at general things without having to roll checks. When you're doing something that does, it's interesting to check. You wouldn't just necessarily automatically succeed, even as cool as you are. Checks are rolled with a 2d8s plus the single highest related trait, which we'll go over in a few minutes. Relevant attribute modifier, which are strength, dex, con, intelligence, wisdom, charisma. and you're going to roll to meet or exceed a target difficulty. And like a thing that's difficult enough that you have to test, but not too challenging, would be a difficulty 9, and it goes up to a 17 as something that's really hard to achieve, nearly impossible. If you roll 2 1s, it's always a failure, and if you roll 2 8s, it's always a success. If there's just no way of succeeding, you don't even get to roll a check. So a check is if it's moderately difficult, but still possible. That's how we figured out. Saving throws work the same way, but you also add your character level to the roll. Combat rounds. Combat round is roughly 6 seconds, like in Dungeons and Dragons. There is initiative in this game. The hero always wins initiative. Unless there's some reason that the hero doesn't. And so in the quick start, they give a good example of the hero tries to, instead of like kicking open a door or breaking through a window, they try to kick in a wall to get into a structure. And the map already has that the bad guys are like right on the other side of that wall. And so they kick in the wall and the bad guys start attacking right away. And the hero is given a check to see if they can do it because it's bamboo or something. They could kick it in. If they fail that check, then presumably they're just hung up kind of halfway through the wall, still trying to break in when the enemies start attacking them. So in that case, it makes narrative sense that the hero's kind of preoccupied and the attacks come in first. And then the second round, the hero goes first in it. So generally you go first, unless it makes sense that you wouldn't. Once you've gone in a round, all of the NPCs act in whatever order the GM wants. And then we go to the next round and you start. Attacks are made with a d20. You add your attack bonus. You add your relevant attribute modifier and the target AC. And so the smaller number that you're adding, the less likely you'll hit the result of 20 or higher. So you
low AC is better.
Yeah, you want your AC to be real low, and you want your enemy's ACs hopefully will be higher. Makes it easier to hit them. The way that damage is rolled, because we have to find a way to breach that system between you're taking hit point damage and everybody else is taking hit dice damage, you roll your dice, and you'll get anywhere from no damage to 4 damage dealt. If you roll a die and you roll a 1, no damage is dealt. A 2 through 5, 1 damage. 6 through 9, 2 damage. 10 or greater, 4 damage.
And this is the 2d8 that I'm rolling?
No. This will be based on your character class and your weapon, and if you're a spellcaster, that's what you're doing. So weapons that give you a higher roll opportunity, like if you're rolling a d10, then you have a better chance at getting 4 damage, and only a 1 in 10 chance of no damage. You're also going to roll your attribute modifier. So let's say you have a strength modifier +2. That means you're always going to do at least 1 damage if you hit with your weapon. So when you deal damage to your enemies, what you're doing is you're actually like chipping away at their hit dice. So let's say like a second level human normal fighter, they have 2 hit dice. You only have to do 2 hit points, 2 damage to kill them. When they deal damage against you, they're dealing hit point damage against you. So they'd have to do 9 against you. It's a way of trying to obfuscate that you're taking damage at a higher level than they are.
Got it.
Also, to demonstrate how badass you are, there's something called a fray die. And I first saw this in Godbound. I love it. You know how when Batman is like fighting the Joker, and the Joker has a room full of henchmen coming at him, and the henchmen really serve the purpose of like giving Batman something to wade through on his way to whatever else he's trying to do. Mm-hmm. Fray dice, depending on your class, you get a fray die. If you choose to, you can choose to use it or not. When you're in combat, you can roll the fray die once per round. We interpret the fray die using the same damage table that we looked at above. And you deal that many hit dice and damage spread among any target that you could reasonably hit, that their maximum hit die is lesser than equal to your level. So when you're starting off at first level, any one hit die creature that's around you, you can just deal that damage to them incidentally to anything else you're doing. So if there's 3 bad guys and you're attacking one of them, you can attack that one, also roll your hit die, and spread that damage amongst all 3 of them as you see fit. If you're trying to pick a lock and you're rolling the skill check to do that, and the bad guys are coming up on you, you can also roll your hit die to, like, maybe you throw a dagger at one that's 10 feet away and you stab one with your short sword while you're still picking the lock. And It's basically like hit die is free damage. You swing around at the low level mooks that are messing with you.
Okay.
So I really like Fray. Defy Death. Your character has an opportunity anytime something goes wrong to do a Defy Death roll. You might miss a saving throw. You might fall off a cliff. You roll a d4. At the start of the adventure, it's always a d4. As you've used it, the die type increases quite a bit. What you do is you interpret that defy, and you roll one die for each level of your character. You interpret the dice as damage. You add up all that damage, and you take it against your character. And as long as you're still conscious afterward, as long as you're not down to 0 hit points, you succeed at whatever the dice normally had you fail at. So it's kind of a last-ditch effort to get by with physical damage. It will be okay. If that damage would knock you down to dead, to 0 or fewer hit points, instead you end up at 1 hit point, and you fail. Like the poison takes effect, whatever else happens. If it was something where you're going to die, then you're probably dead. If it was getting captured by the big bad boss, then you're captured. So that defy danger, defy damage, defy death die. It's kind of a cool way to try and get out of jail. There's also something from a game called the Black Hack that I'd like to throw in here because it's a simplification. It's called a usage die. Instead of tracking how many arrows you're carrying, what we would do is we'd have you add, when you pick up consumable equipment, you'd pick up a quiver of arrows, and you might put the usage die at a D8. Every time you shoot arrows, you roll a D8, and if you score a 1 or a 2, the die drops down to a D6 for the next time you use it. As long as you get 3 or higher, you're cool.
Got it.
Always drop down to a D6. You roll it. If you get a 1 or a 2, it's always a 1 or a 2. If you get a 1 or a 2, it drops down to a D4. As long as you have at least a D4, you can keep trying to use it. But the moment a D4 drops down, dragon. So it saves us having to track individual shots.
Yeah.
Kind of like take care of food, the rations, water you drink, oil for lamps, things like that. You just track the usage die.
Okay.
Those are kind of the basic mechanic things. And then character advancement. Basically, you have to get you start at 0 XP. You need 2 XP to get second, 3 more to get third, 4 more to get fourth. So the system's pretty simple. I think we'll pick it up pretty quickly.
Okay.
What I was thinking would be good to do before we make your character is just to talk real quick about theme. Are there any thematic elements that we particularly want to explore? And it might be interesting to talk about fiction, cultural touchstones that we want to explore. Robert E. Howard Conan, the barbarian type stuff. Do we want lots of wizards and high magic? Do we want to fight dragons, undead? Are there any particular elements that we're particularly interested in?
In terms of what types of mobs or villains, not really. I like something that's more high fantasy with magic being part of it more than some. I wouldn't have as much fun doing a Game of Thrones-y thing where it's very magic sparse and very political. That doesn't sound as fun to me as a more traditional kind of high fantasy background. What are your thoughts?
I am in the same vein, and it sounds like maybe lots of action. Like we're looking at maybe some kind of pulp action more than political intrigue and things.
Yeah, I mean, story is definitely fun too, but I don't want it to just be meat grinder combat stuff. But
I guess we're getting away from courtly intrigue though. Not necessarily. I mean, you definitely can engage in role playing and push narrative things, relationships with people, but you're not trying to arrange other people against one another so much as you're
Right.
getting in there and handling things.
Right.
You are the catalyst for change in the world. Are there any particular things that we want to avoid? Either they're uncomfortable, we don't want to see puppies being beaten, or they're just cliches that we don't want to look at in this particular session or this campaign. Like I said, Game of Thrones, we're not looking for that sort of long, drawn-out kind of windy political thing.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I can't think of any particular like taboo subjects that we've gotten into in the past that I don't know.
It's not even necessarily taboo; just things that aren't interesting could be.
I don't know. What do you think?
No, I think as we are playing, if something was, hey, this is boring, let's not do this, or I'm uncomfortable with this. One thing that the book advises is that because it's one-on-one, you're really controlling what your character looks at.
Mm-hmm.
They advise that the pace of the game tends to go very fast. You don't have to stop in and check in with other players and other characters. Like, hey, are you comfortable doing this?
Right.
Whatever you say goes. So you're going to have a lot of directorial ability, like whatever you pay attention to, that's where the story's going to go.
Okay.
So we'll be able to resolve a lot of it on the fly. But I just want to see if there's things that, in particular, this is kind of a played topic, or, I really don't want to do vampires that sparkle. I'm going to add that. I don't want no sparkly vampires.
Damn it.
Are there any particular cultural touchstones, novels, movies, things you've recently or something that's been in your head that you'd like to try and not necessarily emulate, but be influenced by? Dune, Heinlein.
I mean, I don't get to consume media anymore. I don't know. I mean, I think that when I think of things like Dune or like Blade Runner, I think really, or the Mad Max kind of thing where it's like post-apocalyptic. I like that, but it almost seems like that's a different game, like that's if we want to do Apocalypse World or something, I'd want to save that mind to tap for something like that where it's more kind of geared towards that genre. I mean, I haven't done a more really traditional big quotes D&D type genre, like your typical Forgotten Realms type of genre in a long, long, long time. So I'd be open to that. But again, it's as much about what you're interested in exploring too. I don't know what type of genre you're into.
I'm kind of curious to throw the dice and just see where we end up.
Is there a table to do that?
Actually, there are tables to randomly generate a lot of things, but I meant just as we play, we'll figure out.
Oh, that was it. Okay.
We can also he provides a lot of really cool tables to quickly generate content. One big.
I didn't know if you meant that literally or not.
I didn't, but we definitely can. One thing he really encourages is not spending too much time developing things that you haven't looked at yet.
Mm-hmm.
Just kind of know it's on the periphery, and then as you pay attention to them, he gives some tables to quickly improvise what's going on, or between sessions to just very quickly knock out sketches. Much like the tags and fronts in Dungeon World,
mm-hmm.
He uses a different system, but it's the same idea that you just want an idea of what's out there, and as the player gets there, then you really start looking into it. But once the player turns elsewhere, or once something's mentioned during character creation, if we find out that you used to have a relationship with some faction or something, that puts the faction in the world, right? And we want to start kind of paying attention to them in the background. If you thought it was important to talk about during character creation, then we want to have it influence the story in some way. So, I'd say let's do a little character creation. It's a really quick process. You have a character sheet there. You can use the dice, and let me see how to. I think what you're probably going to do is just slash R4D6 for each stat. The first thing you're going to do is roll your 6 attributes: strength, dex, con, all those. And you can place them in any order that you want. And what you're going to do is roll 4d6. You're going to drop the lowest die, and you're going to sum them. So 5, 5, and 6, you have a 16.
Okay.
You can place it in Strength, Dex, Con, Intelligence, Wisdom, Charisma, and you can roll all 6 first
Okay.
if you want to do that. And then
and I'm gonna get something. I know they'll all still be on the screen, but I'm gonna get something to write them down with, just because it's easier for me to see them all in front of me that way.
I'll type them into the gear section for now.
What's that?
Can you see in the gear section? I'll just type the numbers there as they come in.
Oh, in the Google Hangouts.
No, on your character sheet under gear. I'm just going to type the numbers, and then as we finish, I'll delete them. So there's a 7. That's another 16.
Got it.
3, 3, and 5.
11.
And if you just hit up arrow, you should get the same formula. So 3, 4, and 3 is 10. 4, 6 is 12. One more. Your scores would be 16, 16, 11, 10, 12, 12. They do advise that if you don't have at least one number over a 15, you can drop one and make it a 16. But you have 2 16s,
yes.
2 12s, 11, and 10. Do you know what class you want to play? Multi-class. You can choose one now, and you can move into any other class later.
Hang on 1 second. 11.
And they're clerics, fighters, magic users, which are wizards, and thieves.
I've never really played a magic user, so that could be fun.
For that, you'd probably want a high intelligence.
Let me open this character sheet.
And the way that magic users will work, actually, let me kind of describe that. Do you want me to read the paragraph that's in the book, maybe?
Sure. And I've got the book open in another window. I've been sort of just perusing it as we've been chatting, but
there's a section on page 6 under Choose Your Class where you can see the magic user. At first level, you'll get 1 spell per day, but you also get a fray die of 1d4. And as you roll that can be exemplified, even though maybe you've used your spell or you don't want to cast it yet. Your fray die could be like arcane energies that you're casting out, flame, lightning, whatever you want to do. Your fray die can be anything up to like a distance of 60 feet. You can be killing people with fray.
Are you on page 6 of the QuickStart book?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm on numbered page 6. I'm not actually sure if it's PDF page 6. Let me just double check here.
No, I got you. Okay. Damage die capped at 1d4. Can't cast spells while wearing armor. So afraid I have 1d4. My afraid I can harm even foes more powerful than me.
Yeah, that's a change for wizard or for magic. You can. Other people are limited to foes at their level or lower in hit dice, but you can apply your damage against anybody.
What are traits?
So during creation, you're going to be able to choose traits. You get up to 3 points. You can put all 3 points into one trait, or you can do 3 separate ones or a 2-1. You basically make up a phrase. Let's say you're a wizard and you want to say, I was an acolyte in the Great Library. That's a trait. You make a little phrase, acolyte in the Great Library. I'm going to make it a trait worth 2. Anytime you're trying to do anything that would tie back to your history in the Great Library as an acolyte, any check that you're trying to make, like a skill check, if we can argue that would apply, you get a +2 bonus.
I see.
That's a trait score 2. So you can put all 3 points in one trait, do 3 separate 1-point traits. They're short phrases, and all you have to be able to do is argue that like the phrase applies to the current check, and you get to add the bonus. You don't get to do more than one trait, and so you might not, like if you put all 3 points in separate vague traits, you can't make them all work. So it's basically how important it is to your past. Every level, you're also going to get 1 additional trait point that you can either add to bring one up to a maximum of 3, or create a brand new trait related to what you've been doing in the story.
Okay. Got it. Is there a list of traits to look at, or is it just purely
It's
what you'd
really
make up.
what you want. If you look on the next page, there is choose your hero's traits, and they give an example of an escaped mind slave trait 2. Anytime you're going to be good at all sorts of things you'd expect a mining slave to be good at: navigating dark tunnels, surviving grim privation, identifying ores and subterranean hazards, and hating slave owners. So anytime those sorts of things come up in the game, you have a good shot at, or you get a +2.
Got it. Got it. Okay.
And one thing I'd be amiable to also, the quick start restricts you to being a human character. I also have the full book, and I can share it.
I think you did share it.
Okay. The full book has more races available. They've got halflings, elves, dwarves, and then they also have, there's a setting for the game that I'll ask a little bit later if you want to choose it. They have basically the subhuman races of orcs, hobgoblins, goblins, and something else. I forget offhand which it is. Maybe gnolls. They have like the subhuman races as a group called the Shu, and they're the indigenous people of the primary setting for the game. Humans are have been here for about 300 years or so.
Okay.
But I would say we just do a quick start here, make it a human.
Okay.
Because you're a human, you get 3 traits for any character. Humans get 2 bonus trait points, so you'll have 5 total. Any one trait can be maxed out at 3. So do you see your wizard being somebody who's charismatic, who's being very dexterous, somebody who's...
I always try to play a charismatic character, and I think I want to try not to do that this time. I always fall back on that trope.
Oh, and your 16s are going to be a +2 modifier. Anything from 9 to 12 is a 0 modifier. So really, your 16 will mechanically matter where you put it. Nothing else. The others are all going to fall at a 0 modifier. And I don't think those scores will really change much during advancement. Like when you level up, you won't get to increase them. We might throw in, if you really feel like you wish your stats were able to advance, we'd have to look for like spells, rituals, things you could do to improve them.
Got it. So I'm just assigning points.
And notice the Scarlet Heroes is misspelled on this character sheet.
Okay.
Okay, so you got your points assigned out. I'm going to add the zeros into your modifiers real quick. I'm just going to test a couple. Okay.
Strength 1.
Oh, I don't like that. When you roll a trait, it's 2d8 plus something. So that we need to be aware of that roll button. I'll end up doing some macros where we can roll traits and things.
Okay.
Okay.
Or maybe I'll just have dice next time we play.
Yeah. If we want to go with dice, I think this game should be one that we can fairly quickly work that out. One thing we'd want to be able to do in some cases is distinguish. Like if you have dice of different colors, I think you recommend 2d6 and 2d8 of different colors.
Okay.
Sometimes one will be first and the other one second. So choose your character's, your hero's concept and name. Concept is just kind of a high concept describing the wizard or the magic user.
Is that? And again, I'm not trying to lean on the charts, but I just want to make sure I've got the right idea. It's this thing where I see there's like a D10 chart where are we talking about background? Is concept different?
Trying to think of where you are.
I'm on the QuickStart page 7.
I flipped back to I flipped back to roll your 6 attributes. After that, before we get to choose your class, we have choose your hero's concept and name. And
Oh, I
concept
see.
is the 4 traits, and it's really just kind of a quick phrase that won't mechanically impact the game, but it will give us a little bit of a handle as you answer the next questions.
Mm-hmm. So I think that this character is not your typical wizard who has hung out in libraries and studied and I mean obviously he studied, but this isn't like somebody who's just has poured over tomes his whole life. I think that this is more somebody who's was like an arcane sort of child prodigy, to where he maybe even grew up on a farm, and has a very sort of pragmatic, real world view of things, as opposed to being a sheltered, scholarly, sage-like person. Um, he's almost intelligent and bright, despite his more grounded outlook on the world, if that makes sense.
I'm picturing a very, you said like a farm. You're from a fairly small rural
Yeah.
community. You grew up like having heard rumors about your parentage. I think like you fell pretty far from the apple tree, right? Both your mother and father, whether good or bad people, they clearly weren't in tune with you. What's a rumor that you've heard from the townsfolk about your upbringing when you were a child, or
About
about your lineage? Like, are you descended from a god, or are you from an elf, or why are you different? Why are you more bright, more inquisitive, quicker to
maybe
figure things out?
maybe descended from an elf. That could be good. Um, the sort of like pop culture analogy I can think of is in shows like Northern Exposure. Do you remember that show? Where it's like you're in a town of small town kind of bumpkin people, but there's a few that are just in a really practical sense brighter than you'd expect.
Mhm.
They're even though they're not from a worldly background.
Now, I think also, in addition to being kind of brighter,
Like
and,
he
and
probably is really well read, but he hasn't like been tutored and poured over by um, in some sort of academy. He's sort of always been curious and just devours information.
I can almost see if you had a supportive family, like every time the Tinkerer came through, any books they could find, you would read, and you'd read them time and again, front to back. Um, they couldn't keep up with your appetites for reading, but you didn't have much material to get your hands on.
Mhm.
Um, you, I think, also stand apart from normal people. Like we said with the Frey die, like you're the only person in the world that has a Frey die. You stand apart from your peers from a fairly early age. I think that idea of elven blood kind of makes sense here. And in the setting, if we choose to go with the setting, elves were humans who a long time ago attempted to do a ritual that would make them immortal, and instead it changed them into elves. It gave them they don't die of age. They're not immortal, but it extended their life,
Mhm.
and it kind of corrupted them or made them change from humans to being these very facile and magic kind of creatures. But so there's that idea that elves initially were humans long ago who fell or ascended. And so yeah, that idea that you've got some elven blood and you might be interesting in that sort of take. Um, maybe as we identify your spell book spells, we'll kind of get a sense for how you learned these particular spells, how it might tie in your background. Do you have a name?
I didn't have one in mind, but I came totally unprepared to this. Let's
You can make one up later, but
no, I can come up with a quick name. Let's go, Calum. I don't know for a surname what it should be.
with a silent N.
Is mage what I am, or magic user, or
Magic user.
Uman?
Is the in the world so far, the world that Calum has explored, is magic of the sorts he does rare, uh, unheard of, or is it kind of known that there are wizards somewhere, but it's not ubiquitous, or is there a lot of magic?
I would say it's known that there are wizards somewhere, but it's not ubiquitous. And I would think that it's the kind of thing where when you go to the larger cities, the larger metropolitan areas, there are probably magic users in schools, or maybe even magic users that kind of pimp out their abilities to people who need assistance with whatever. But I mean, in the villages and the small towns and even the medium-sized towns, it's not. You really have to go seek people out who have these abilities.
Is there any sort of superstition against magic use in the villages, or it's kind of big city things and not?
I don't know. I mean, I suppose maybe in certain cultures there would be superstition around it. I don't know if I would think in the culture that I come from, it's not superstition as much as just he grew up with people thinking he's kind of like strange or weird or different.
So now we're down to traits and checks, or just traits, I guess. And again, you're going to have 5 points total, 3 for character generation, and then 2 bonus for human. Any one can be up to 3-point total. I think at least one should tie into your background.
Yeah.
You know a lot about agriculture. You
maybe his father was a carpenter, and so he has some sort of kind of limited, not so much engineering skills, but like just kind of more simple woodworking and like simple physics, like using levers and inclines and kind of troubleshooting to make jobs easier, if that makes sense. I don't know if we want to call that carpentry or engineering or mechanics or what.
probably also I could see that being noticing if an area is like a structure is unstable, how you'd reinforce it, building defensive fortifications if it got to that sort of thing. Like,
I mean, it's a I would think I'm trying to work off of the idea that his father was somebody who worked with their hands, and with his curious mind, he's just like, oh, how do I make this easier? How do I, how does this work? How do these things work together? Would that be just kind of like mechanics, or what would you want to call that?
I think let's call it carpenter's apprentice or something of that sort. And we can kind of define it and redefine it during play. You'll be able to say like, oh, you know what? Like, I think that would apply here, and we'll tease out more of its importance as we go. And we don't need to worry about assigning points just yet. I think we'll need at least one more trait, probably a couple more.
I think it would be cool if he was like a speed reader. He's one who can just like intake information really quickly. He doesn't have a photographic memory or anything, but he can just sort of absorb content quickly.
I'm going to rephrase it, a quick study, and we won't limit it to speed reading. It could cover speed reading. It could also be walking into a room and kind of assessing a situation, or pouring through books and quickly getting to the relevant details. Does that make sense?
Probably, you think one more?
I'd say one or two more.
You said one or two more?
Yeah. Every time you level, you'll get one more point, so you can continue to add to these. But if you want to go like 3-2 amongst these, then we don't need any more.
As levels go on, can I add new traits, or am I stuck with these?
No, you can add new traits, and you can assign points back to old traits that have like been particularly useful or relevant to your story.
Got it.
What's we're gonna find you kind of at the start of your career, where like the epic tale really begins, but something probably took you outside of the hometown and put you on a path to like a new, like we're gonna find you kind of in the middle of a story or in the middle of a scene where you're kind of on your first heroic step. Is there a trait that got you from your home to the steps of this dungeon?
There is.
Are you running from something? Are you chasing something? Are you just seeking knowledge? Um, Driven by dreams, pursuing an oracle.
I think seeking knowledge sounds good, or pursuing something, whether it's a thing or whether it's an idea. I'm sorry, I really came to this without preparing much, so without preparing anything. So,
Say let's and it just has to be like a phrase that kind of outlines. A quick study means you soak up information quickly. It doesn't necessarily mean what you're pursuing. Although maybe there's going to be a section later where we talk about goals. Maybe we'll get a goal out of this later. Let's for now just do those. You mind doing them 3-2, and then we'll kind of rebalance them as needed. Then we can add another one or two. I think once we've played a little bit, we can also take a look at this character and kind of rebuild him around.
Sure.
Him. Is it a him? Kill him? Yeah.
Okay.
So
now with magic, it sounds like I get one spell per day, but do I have multiple to choose from, or?
yes. So what you're going to get, I think it's let me get to the spell book part. I think you get one spell plus your modifier for a spell book. If you look at PDF page 12, you've got the number. You've got the total.
This is on the quick start one.
Yeah. Yeah, magic user. I'm on page 10 under preparing spells, and it says a magic user hero's spell book starts with a number of spells equal to 2 plus the magic user's intelligence modifier. So your modifier is 2, so you actually have 4.
Okay.
Out of the first level spells, you can choose 4 of them.
Where are the first level spells?
It's on page 12, the numbered page 12. And if you tell me which ones are interesting, I can copy and paste them. At least the titles. And remember that with your Fray die, even if you've cast your spell or you're holding on to it, you can use your Fray die to still be doing spell-like effects, like you're still shooting magic missiles or whatever.
Sorry, I'm reading the last one.
No, that's good.
Okay, so I like Seven Small Thunders. I like the Least Alchemy of Forms. Amber Cloud of Somnolence. And Painted Vermilion Eyes. Is it the same spells in both books?
The other book has spells going beyond first level. QuickStart's really restricted to first level.
Got it.
These spells are all in there. I don't think there's any other first level spells. Let me just double check. And I can tell you where the spell book is once I find it here.
I think it's page 35. I'm just trying to find that page. There we go.
Yeah, it's the same 10 spells for first level. Oh, Call of the Hidden Light. Is that a different? It's not.
Oh, there's quite a few different ones.
Yeah, in the first level column?
Oh, no. Hang on.
Oh, no. The apprehending the imbalance is not there. If you want to read through those, if there's any that you want, we would take those in instead. Let me double check. I think under advancement, I think I'll find that you also get a spell at every level. Let me just double check that.
I think instead of... What did I do? I think instead of Painted Vermilion Eyes, I might take Apprehending the Imbalance.
Okay. What I'll do is kind of before the next session, I'll put together a document in Roll20 that has these spell effects listed, so we can quickly reference them when we need to.
Okay.
And I can probably just generate the whole list of all the wizard spells, but then give you access to a spell book just for Caleb.
Okay.
We jumped to spells We
Oh,
got past
that,
that's fine, but we got past the idea of doing the final touches, your character's hit points. And so a mage's hit points are 4 plus your con bonus, which is 0. Yeah, 4 hit points. We note down your fray die, which is a d4.
Is there? I don't see a spot for my fray die.
It's on the line below. It's put d4. Plus 0 bonus to your attack, plus 0 attack bonus. And you cannot wear.
I can't cast spells if I wear armor, right?
Yeah. So you have a base armor class of 9 minus your dex modifier. So your base armor would be 7, which is the equivalent of a thief in leather armor without a dex modifier. So when people roll to hit you, they get to add 7 to their attack roll on a d20. And if the roll is over 20, they hit you.
So I'm going to get hit a lot.
If you get into a position where they get to hit you. Now, they're also going to do, depending on the weapon they have, max 4 damage, but they're more than likely going to be doing like 1 damage at a time. If they, depending on their weapon again. The idea is that you're not going to take a lot of damage from simple folks.
Right.
You also have the ability to stop and bandage yourself. It takes minutes, so you have to be out of combat. After any combat, you can stop or anything that hurts you, you can stop and just heal 2 hit points of damage that you've recently received. So if you start, if you walk into an adventure and you're already 3 hit points down, you can't bandage those 3 hit points. If you take 5 hit points of damage in any one scene and you bandage the end of it, at best you can heal back 2.
But I'll be dead then.
And we'll have a few thematic questions I want to ask about before we actually play.
Do we need to do anything about speed, or is that not as important?
Speed, based on your human, I believe it's 30. Let me just get to it here. That might actually not be in the.
I'm so dexy. I should be fast.
I'm pretty sure it's 30. Let me just see if I can find it.
I'm going to give myself 31, just so I'm slightly better.
You're a cheater.
Got 1 extra foot. Or, you know what? I'll go 30, but I'm measuring mine in yards.
Nice. Go ahead and roll. You're allowed to start with a dagger and a pack with ordinary traveling supplies. And then roll 2d10 to see how much silver coin you have. And I have a list, and it's in the book.
Silver coins. Booyah.
How much did you end up with?
18. 9 plus 9 silver coins. I get a dagger and what else?
A dagger
bag of jerky.
And ordinary traveling supplies. And then without spending money, you can pick an additional weapon from the list below. Now, your weapon does cap out at 1d4 because you're a wizard, so you won't do the damage reflected on the weapon, but you can choose. And if you're doing either a melee weapon that's like short sword, dagger, things like that, you can do dex. If it's like a one-handed quick little weapon, you can use dex instead of strength to hit. And then the same thing with range weapons. You'll use dex instead of strength. And then you'll apply dex to the damage modifier instead of strength as well.
Where's the list of stuff?
I'm looking for it here.
Is it on page 8?
The QuickStart has something on page 8, and then there's also an equipment list that I'll find in just a moment. Equipment, page 12 of the main book. A lot of prices are in gold. You have 1.8 gold with 18 silver. You have prices for like hire hirelings to get gear.
It was on page 12 of the main book.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I really like the idea of adventuring gear that they have in Dungeon World, where you don't have to predefine everything you've bought. I would say that the ordinary traveling supplies, I'd like to put a D8 usage die behind that. So just in parentheses, put D8. And anytime you want to use that, as if you were using a you're going to roll a D8. And if you get a 1 or a 2, we're going to drop that number down to a D6. But it should give you a good number of uses before it's depleted. And then if you kind of, depending on how you want to go about the game, if you scavenge from people you've fallen in things, we might obfuscate some of the loot that you get. We'll say, oh, you know what, increase your traveling supplies by 1 die type. Just to kind of show that you've picked up some odds and ends.
What sort of equipment am I supposed to be looking for? Or
is there anything you particularly want? I think let's go ahead and don't even worry about money just yet. I want to kind of get into the game here if we can. Put down rations, D6 type, D6 usage die. And then take the 1 free weapon. And if you take a bow, I would take a D8 arrows also.
Oh, so I get 1 free weapon.
Yeah, you'll get 1 free weapon from the list on page 8 of the QuickStart.
Yeah. Okay, I'm sorry. I think I will use. I think I'll go with a short sword. Yes, a short sword. Oh, you know what? No. Would it be weird to have a crossbow?
Yeah.
It seems like a little mechanical thing that he might have. Let's do that.
Is it a contraption that he made himself or he got from home?
I think he made it himself.
If you look on page 15, there's also a different character sheet. And I'll pull that out of a PDF tomorrow and put it up separately in a Google Drive that I'll share.
Okay.
But that might be a convenient thing to keep track of stuff on. I can even make that a form fillable PDF. If we move away from Roll20 and you still want to track your character sheet online, maybe that as a form fillable PDF would be better than Roll20.
I'm cool with moving away from Roll20 and actually rolling real dice. I think that might be fun. I just have to go get some dice.
Yeah. And we can kind of figure out what works for us, especially since it's just the 2 of us. We're the only customers we have to satisfy.
If I adventure for a while, I'll be able to afford a crowbar.
What's the price on a crowbar?
5 gold pieces.
That's a really sturdy crowbar.
Right?
You can use that to hunt crows. You can use that to shake angrily at crows if they get near your cornfields.
Mm-hmm. Why don't I just get a bunch of iron spikes? I'm sorry, with the crossbow, you said what's the die on it? 1D.
It's going to be a D4. Because you chose the magic user, your weapon die type maxes at D4.
But I mean the usage roll.
Oh, make it a D8 for your ammo.
Got it. Oh, God. Can't stop yawning. We went out last night.
Oh, I'm yawning. They're freaking addictive. Okay. And you might, under weapons, I would add, I'm going to go ahead and do it here. I'm going to add 2. I'm going to add crossbow. Bonus is going to be 2, and damage is D4 plus 2, and the way that comes from is it's the base damage plus the dex modifier. Roll that, and oh, that's cool. It gives us the little macro.
Got it.
But what it didn't do was it didn't ask us for armor class, so we have to add all the armor class in on our own. Then I'm going to add dagger. Damage bonus or bonus to attack is 2, and it's another D4 plus 2. Okay. Oh, I would keep those where you had them under gear though to track the usage die.
I put it. I put it above. Is that right?
Yeah, and the daggers can be throwing daggers. I would say go ahead and make that a usage die of 1d4. If you throw one, you have a 50-50 chance that you threw your last one, but at least that way you've got a chance to have more than one in you. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Or if you think they're even small throwing knives, I'd even pump it up to a d6 if you think you have several of them kind of secreted around your body.
I don't think so. I don't think he's that dude. I don't think he's that kind of guy. 1d4 is probably good.
Let's identify which spell you have prepared right now.
Let's do. So, am I like on an adventure? Is that?
Yeah, when we get to that part, we'll actually be at the foot of a dungeon, getting ready to go in.
7 small thunders. Then I'll do my offensive spell.
And I'm going to ask a few questions that are going to kind of take us away from the character for just a moment, and then we'll get back to the character, and then we can take a quick break and then play for maybe a little short while.
Sure.
So I have this on the start of campaign and session handout. I just kind of made these questions up. What ally, if any, do we know about at the start of the campaign? So an ally of Callum's. And somebody who's immediately in the narrative. We're going to assume that like your father, mother, people from the village that are still alive, like anybody who's from your history is generally friendly. Mm-hmm. But who's somebody that you might run into soon in the fiction?
Maybe there's a friend that he grew up with who was sort of the yin to his yang. Like, if I was I was never the big, strong kid, and I was just kind of the mentally quick. Athletic because he grew up working on farms and stuff. That's why he's kind of nimble. But I was always kind of the smaller, thinner kid. And there was a buddy that I grew up with who was kind of the big hoss of a guy who we looked out for each other. He was sort of kept the boys off me, and I helped him out where I could as well.
Okay. We'll come up with a name for him kind of in play.
Okay.
Like that. What regional threats do we know about at the start of the campaign? This doesn't have to tie into the dungeon we're going into right now, but just kind of what's a thing that's out there right now? Is there a foreign kingdom invading? Is there a natural disaster? Is there a drought or a plague on the food, blight on the food crops? Invading army of monsters?
Maybe it's kind of going off the theme of the 7 plagues where there's these kind of catastrophes happening that seem related in time, but they're different types. Like you've got the plague of locusts and the famine and the those kinds of things are hitting, and people think that it's a sign of an evil portent or like a sign of the end of the world or whatever. People are sort of debating what's going on.
What personal threat or threats face the hero at the start of the campaign? Again, it won't necessarily be tied to this dungeon, but there's a thing out there in the world that Callum's aware of. He's either on his way to confront or fleeing from or just keeping his head low.
His family's business, his dad's carpentry business, was in trouble because all of the surrounding farmers in the surrounding area have failing crops, failing businesses of their own, and Caleb tried to use his magic to help save the business, and it went wrong somehow, and so he had to get out of Dodge.
Okay, good. And then Scarlet Heroes includes the question of a character's goal, but I'm going to expand it a bit using terminology from a game called Blade of Wheels. No, what the hell is it called? Burning Wheel. Blade of Wheels. I'm going to ask about a belief, an instinct, and a goal. So Scarlet Heroes wants to know a goal. It's kind of the immediate driving goal for now, and eventually we can turn into like long range goals. But kind of what's the quick goal that Callum's looking for? And knowing this will help me kind of prepare for the next session or next sessions.
With quick goal, are we looking at something that we're going to solve in a session?
A session or two, yeah, something. And then as we're playing, we can make those long-term goals if we want to. And you can have more than one.
But it should be pretty concrete. It shouldn't be just like to expand his skills. It's got to be something.
Yeah, something achievable, something with an end mark.
Got it.
So actually, before you answer that, let's just talk real quick about the three things: belief, instinct, and goal. Goal is something you're trying to achieve. Belief is kind of a philosophical principle. Life is, the good life is the pursuit of knowledge, would be a belief. Yeah. A goal would be to unlock a secret about magic or the secret of the plagues, something like that.
Right.
An instinct is how does Callum react when he's, when that fight or flight instinct kicks up, or when he's confronted with a tense social situation. Like, it doesn't have to be his only instinct, but what's kind of a pattern of behavior that will either help Callum through a tense moment by just he does the right thing, or can even be the wrong thing. In Burning Wheel, if you let your instinct get you into trouble, like if you have a quick temper and you draw your blade at the slightest provocation, and you use that to draw an inappropriate situation, you actually gain XP and things for that.
Okay.
It's going to help us flesh them out a little bit.
I would say his belief is that there is order to the world. That's, that when faced with a problem, you can use sort of logic and some concept of order in nature to figure things out, right? Like it's like the opposite of entropy. It's not that we're swimming through a world of chaos. Things fit together in a way, and you just have to figure out how the puzzle fits to figure out what the right thing to do is. Does that make sense?
And yeah, it does. And I think a corollary might be if there's a problem, either the problem is due to some disorder, or you just don't understand the world well enough to understand why it's
right. You're not seeing the pattern yet.
But it could be either way. Somebody could be actively disrupting natural order, or you need to learn to accept the mystery of God, or whatever.
Right.
And I'm not trying to add any sort of deist in there yet, but what instinct of the hero often guides your thoughts and actions?
This could be an annoying one to run a game with, but I want to sort of my instinct is to build off that belief to say that his instinct is to try to figure things out, to try to reason things out. So he can sometimes get bogged down in the why rather than reacting and acting. If that makes sense. Like he'll spin his wheels, like running through scenarios in his head. Is like, what about this? Or maybe it's this, or I could do this. And he'll get sort of caught up in the not the planning phase so much, but sort of he's like almost like troubleshooting in his head all the different possibilities before he picks, oh, it must be this one. Does that make sense?
I remember, I think it was the Buddha. It might have been the I Ching, but I think it was the Buddha who said, when you're shot with an arrow, don't stop to examine who made the arrow. You know, the manufacturer of the arrow. You try and treat the wound. It sounds like Kala might be the person who, like, oh, I've been shot with an arrow and it was made out of a yew branch and the feathers are from this bird. Like, you get a little distracted by the details instead of necessarily the immediate.
Right. But it's not a childlike distraction. It's more of a distraction of, oh, in order to solve this problem, I need to know as much as I can about everything that's going on so that I can pick the right approach. Does that make sense?
So you don't often you'll sometimes delay timely action in favor of being like really sure you're taking the right action.
Right. He is the definition of the guy who misses the forest for the trees.
Okay. Very good. Very good. And then what is the hero's goal? And here we go. We start off with the current goal, and we'll move into maybe developing additional goals. But
I mean, I think it could be discovering the cause of the plagues. Or the goal could be, going to insert thing here to get help for his community, whether it's going to the capital city, going to the garrison, going to the magic academy, going to the temple, whatever, I don't know, whatever that thing is in his circle of where you'd go to call in the reinforcements.
I'm going to volunteer an interpretation that may or may not be accurate, and if you don't like it, we'll definitely just move away from it. But I think that Callum is also fairly certain that the failure of his magic that has kind of caused some trouble back home was probably actually a manifestation of the plagues, not necessarily his magic. I mean, his magic is infallible. It's natural and logical. It went wrong in a way that he does not understand and feels that like maybe it's tied to the plagues. And so part of his desire to figure out what's going on with the plagues might be to kind of absolve the idea that he's guilty for whatever happened back home.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
At the end of each session, we're going to ask 4 questions. The first 2 are for XP, and the second 2 are just to drive character progression. First question is, did you undertake a heroic challenge this session? If so, gain 1 XP. So as long as I provided the opportunity and you've engaged to try and do a heroic challenge in a session, you'll gain XP. Second question is, did you succeed gloriously or fail spectacularly, or did we learn something interesting about you? If so, gain an XP. So you're going to be rewarded for kind of doing an undertaking, for taking on an undertaking. You'll also be rewarded for either completing a challenge, whether it's successful or failure, as long as it's big and dramatic, or if we learn something interesting about you. So if a session doesn't conclude a current adventure, but we did a lot of cool character exploration, we're going to give XP for that as well. And then also at the end of each session, we're going to ask, how have your goals, instincts, or beliefs, and I spelled beliefs wrong, beliefs been reinforced, challenged, or changed? And so that question is going to help us kind of check in at the end of the session. And we'll also check in at the beginning to review beliefs, instincts, and goals. At the end of a session, we're going to kind of check in and see, have we been tailoring the play around the character's identity and beliefs and all that? And then we'll also ask, what are your plans for tomorrow? And that's prompted to kind of give me a little insight into what we do next. Last question I have, do we want death to be like a real threat, in this game? Do we want to have it be a real threat immediately, or do you want to play a little bit and then kind of determine how dangerous it can get? Or do you kind of we decide that death makes sense in a scene or not, and if it doesn't make sense, then we figure out what happens?
No, I mean, I'm fine with it always being a possibility.
Okay. Generally, what's going to happen then is if you get down to 0 hit points, you're dead. If it makes sense that you would have been captured and we want to see what happens to Column after capture, then we can do that. And the goal wouldn't be to like, now we role play that you spend 8 years in jail and we're going to try and role play those days. But we'd like, yeah, you've just spent 8 years in jail and now
right.
Or if it makes sense, like this is a good time to retire Column and maybe pick up a new character in the same story or start a new one, then he would die. But yeah, I won't be pulling punches, and we'll just kind of accept that death may or may not happen if you get down to 0 hit points. We'll talk then about what makes sense. Very cool. I'm not sure how much you're going to see of this next page. Let's see if I drop you here. Oh. There's not. Let me move players to there. Do you see a dark page or do you see things?
I see dark things. No, I just see a dark page. I see no other things. In the beginning, there was darkness, though. That's what I hear.
Trying to remember how to get you. Oh, I think I need to give you a character token here. There we go. Do you want to choose a file real quick, or do you want me to I'm just going to get you one for now, an art asset that will be your little token on the map. But if you find something in the near future, I'm going to give you this guy.
Where is it? I don't see it. Oh, nice. He looks like a Sims version of Gandalf.
I'm going to move him down. The squares are actually 10 feet. And then let me give you light. What's your light source? What's your light source? Do you have a torch? Do you have magical light?
I don't know. I don't have a light spell, do I? Or do we just say that I do?
I think you can kind of snap your fingers and make a light appear somewhere.
Okay. Then that's probably what I do. I still see just a black page, though. Is that what I'm supposed to see?
Do you have access to kind of move him around?
I don't see him at all.
Oh,
where on the black box would I see him?
I'm pinging, but I'm trying to give him. I haven't played with this stuff enough to. Let me try this. Do you see him show up there?
Yes, now I do.
Yeah, it's going to be a pain in the butt. Let's see. And he's gone again?
Yep.
Okay, there we go. This will be a lot easier. So let me get to the. So this is an adventure that's within the QuickStart as a just kind of primer to start it off.
Mm-hmm.
Let me get to it real quick. Do you want to take a quick break before we get into it?
I wouldn't mind taking a quick one just to use the restroom and grab a drink real quick.
Let's do that. Come back in like 5 minutes, 10 minutes?
Yeah. I'm good to come back in 5.
All right, I'll be right back.
Hello.
Hello, hello.
I can see less of the world now.
Yes, I've hidden the world from your view.
I see what looks like a panda sticking out from right here.
Let me just kind of move some things into place, and I will restore your view. Okay. So briefly, what brought Callum Shale to this location is in your travels seeking information about the plagues, you heard that a small cluster of farming villages scattered around a big plains, um, primarily textiles. I think the Cotton Hill is the particular village that you came to. The small cluster of villages have all reported that their young men have been going missing for the past several weeks. Um, at Cotton Hill, the first village that you came to, someone told you that there's been old, long past stories about this barrow out, almost a day's journey outside of town. Um, all the rumors and gossip are that the young men have been taken there. I think kind of based on where they were abducted from, and kind of as time's moved on, it's radiating out from a certain point, and they're all sure it's this accursed barrow out there. Um, as we go through play, you might have questions of things that you'd ask them. We can kind of come up with those as you play, and we'll do flashbacks as needed. But Callum finds himself now standing at this barrow, huge mound of earth. Think of like the in Illinois the burial mounds. Uh, huge barrow, and carved into the hillside looks like fresh fallen dirt and rock. Maybe had been piled in front of the barrow at this point. Has recently been excavated, and standing right in front of you, there's these heavy metal doors that are barely open, just a crack, too small for you to slip through. Um, Deep shadows are all you can tell through the crack. There are heavy bronze chains that dangle broken from the doors, and the doors themselves are marked with very intricate glyph work. And as a matter of fact, you can tell on the chain there seems to be, from a distance, you seem to see glyphs also engraved on the chains. You find yourself probably took most of the day to get out here. It's probably in the waning hours of light, maybe 7 o'clock at night. What do you do?
Quick mechanical question. I know I get one spell per day. Does that mean I can only cast my one spell once?
Yes, once you cast it, unlike Dungeon World, that spell is gone. Your fray damage in any one combat turn, let's say you attack with your dagger or your crossbow, you can also attack with your fray damage, even if you're not using a weapon attack. And you can tell me how those manifest. It could be that you're striking out with your dagger or shooting your crossbow. Those won't use your usage die either when you do your fray die.
Okay.
It could also be that you just sizzle with electrical energy, and as people grab you, they're frying.
Got it. Well, does it look like something broke out of this chamber? Was it chained closed and something broke out, or did?
Yeah, good question. I'm looking at your character sheet. I'm kind of considering what we've talked about. You're a quick study. You have 3 trait points in that. You also have Carpenter's Apprentice. If you were doing a check, you wouldn't get to add them both, but you would get to add quick study. Your wisdom is 12, which is your kind of perceptiveness. So there's a 0 bonus there. I quickly weigh the facts like, well, what would you be able to tell? You can actually tell that this was excavated from the exterior, right? Instead of something having forced its way out from the way the rocks have been piled, it looks like there was an effort to like remove rock and scoot it away and remove rock and scoot it away. You actually see chisel marks around the door as they kind of broke away, as they kind of honed in on where the door was. Like maybe it's excavated a little bit further, 5 feet to the east. And then they got the door and they cleared that away. How close do you get to the doors as you're inspecting it?
I'll go right up. Oh,
Yeah.
I got it. I'll go right up to him.
So again, the chains themselves are etched with glyphs. It's clearly hand etching as well. There's no sort of stamping machine that made these chains. The chains were all hand wrought links and hand lift. Great expense was put into making these chains. They're bronze. Maybe not much value in material, but clearly the manufacture that went into these chains was expensive labor and knowledge. Probably magical components as well. And they've been sundered. Looks like somebody got a pry bar, probably a 5 gold at least crowbar, scattered a link, and pulled the doors open.
Okay. I'm going to take a step in with my light spell and just kind of look and see what the first chamber that I'm in looks like. Is this extensive to where I want to hold off until morning before I start exploring, or is this the kind of thing I could venture in a bit just to see what I'm dealing with?
So I'm going to reveal kind of from the door. Do you actually push the doors open a little bit?
Yeah, you said they were open a little bit, but if I need to push them open a bit to go in, I will.
Yeah. You have to kind of put your shoulder to it, but you're able to push it open a bit. It does make a kind of a loud protesting wail as it scrapes across the ground. The wail echoes into the chamber. You can tell from that alone that it goes fairly deep. Your light goes in about 30 feet. Actually, I'm going to give you all the exterior view. You're able to see all of this. We expose the panda bear as a bush.
Damn it.
There are tools. I threw this map together kind of last minute based out of the book. There are tools to do dynamic lighting. As you control your character and move around, you can actually have the light move with you. I just need to set the maps up to use it.
I don't know if I can control my character at this point.
Go ahead and click on him and see if you can. I want him to be something you can pick up and move around. Okay, let's see.
I don't want to get bogged down in like the mechanical stuff, but just so as you know.
Oh, I've got them on their own token. I'd rather you be able to move him. Can you pick him up and move him?
Do you want me to try again?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, now I can.
Does the light change as you move him kind of into the interior?
No.
Okay. So yeah, with your initial glance in there, you do see that about 30 feet past the doors, there's a 20-foot long hallway that you're in right now. It opens up from the echo from the doors opening, and as you kind of move in, your footfalls resound through this big cavern that's there. You see great big pillars. Those 2 black circles there are great big pillars that go up. You think probably close to the top of the burial mound. I think we're also on a little bit of a downward ramp that you're going down, maybe about a 5 foot, probably a little bit less than 5 foot drop over the 20-foot length. So you're kind of going down deeper, and it fills up to the height of this huge hill that you're going into. So you're contemplating.
It's like a domed ceiling, like the hill.
The tunnel that you're in is not domed. It's clearly carved out. You would need to pursue into the interior if you wanted to kind of see the ceiling of the chamber in there.
And I'm not like exhausted from a day's travel. I could venture into this, or
I'm gonna say it's about 15 miles from Cotton Hill. You got a fresh start early in the morning. You walk, at a reasonable pace to get here. And that's going off the idea that soldiers walk roughly 20 miles in a day carrying packs and stuff. Like with your gear, you show up not like not too tired. You could go back and rest. You cannot refresh your spell until the next morning. The idea is that mages can prepare spells once a day, and by default it's morning. If the column, I don't see why we couldn't. But
Okay, no, I'll venture in. I'll I'm curious of what's going on here. So this, sorry, go ahead.
I'm going to just kind of slowly reveal as you move in. Your light, kind of as you get to that point, your light shows figures standing behind those pillars. And at first, I mean, you're probably startled a little bit. There's a little bit of a stench of decayed flesh, of death. You probably had maybe a butcher that served your village, wherever the corpses sat before they could be burned. If anything lingered behind, a charnel house type smell. The figures are standing free of the pillars. They're all facing inward away from you. Your light does extend to the ceiling now, and you do see the ceiling's probably about 30 foot high. These columns go all the way to the top, and you see frescoes along the walls and hammered into the pillars, decorative frescoes that appear to depict some sort of battle scenes that have taken part. Maybe there's a little bit of a dripping noise. You're not quite sure where it's coming from off in the distance. That cloying death smell takes a few moments to get used to, but you are getting used to it. And as you're kind of taking this in, you've watched those figures and nothing happens. Out of the corner of your eye, you see one of them kind of shift its weight a little bit. But it's still, even though it's fully bathed in your light, it has not responded.
Do they look like they're standing, or are they laying down? Or
no, they're freestanding. They're wearing looks like tattered cloaks. Armor, like from the pants, you see they're wearing some sort of like armor boots and leather leggings, probably. You don't get clear view from where you are. They're kind of behind the pillars there, but yeah, it's sentries or something standing back there.
Okay. I'm gonna ready my crossbow just so I have it handy. And I'm gonna. Are the pillars large enough so that I can't? I mean, could I like kind of shimmy behind one, or is it too tight between the pillar and the wall?
The pillars are about a 5 foot diameter, and there's probably about 2 or 3 foot between the pillar and the wall there, where you're thinking about kind of scooting behind. And so it's plenty of room for you to shimmy through. Yeah,
so I want to kind of circle around to where I can see what's going on with these figures, but I don't want to just walk right here next to him.
Yeah.
I'd rather kind of circle the long way around and just peek and see if I can get a better look.
Very good. And now keep in mind, and when we get dynamic lighting turned on, this will be even better, or it'll take care of itself. But as you move around, your light goes about 30 feet out, and so your guessing stuff stays in place as you move about. Yeah, you're able to scoot around. Just drop your character where you want him to be.
Okay.
And I'll update the.
Sort of there, but I want him to kind of be hugging up against the wall, and he wants to be as far away from these figures as he can, and trying to move as quietly as he can. Although he is emitting light, so I'm sure that he's not being super sneaky.
Probably helps. You're definitely not stealthy in terms of your carrying light, but you're wearing no armor. You're very dexterous. I imagine that probably fairly nimble on your feet. So stealthy is not an unreasonable thing. As you get up and get close, you're now standing 15 feet from one of these things. One thing we can do is we're getting close to NPCs is you can roll a reaction. It's going to be 2d8 plus your charisma modifier, which is 0. So just roll flat 2d8.
Okay.
And you can add a highest relevant diplomatic trait. So on a 2, the worst thing possible happens. On a 16, the best thing possible happens. It gets modified by who the NPCs are and what's going on. So the 6, as you kind of meander in, they're not really paying much attention. But as you come around the pillar, you see that the 2 of them there turn, and they kind of turn to face you with regard. They're young men, but their faces are gaunt, tight against their flesh. You see the decay has set in. There's something about them that kind of gives away that I think they're brothers, and they look exactly like one of the people from Cotton Hill that sent you here, who's like their older brother. Like they have that familiar resemblance, but they're clearly like a week dead.
No, wow.
They're standing there. Their eyes are white, like cataract over, but their faces turned directly toward you. Even though the little icons that I have there show bows, I think they're actually each carrying a spear. They're wearing a uniform that like when they were abducted from Cotton Hill, they were both like farmhands. They've been outfitted in some sort of ancient armor. On the chest, they're wearing kind of a hauberk, like a breastplate type thing, and they're punctured through. There's a big gaping hole in the chest, and it kind of goes in. I think you actually can see some rotting flesh in there. It looks like it goes into a chest wound on the corpses. But while they're corpses, they are turning to face you. One of them, the one closest to you, raises his spear kind of crossways as if to bar your progress. Neither of them advance on you. I'm making them color-coded. I don't know if it shows up very well.
It does. I have a blue one and a red one.
Yeah.
And is one in front of the other, or are they next to each other?
They are kind of arranged the way that they're shown there. One is behind the other. Red is in front of blue, I think.
Okay. So I guess I'm pointing my crossbow at red and just saying, "Oh, what happened to you? Who did this? Why are you? What happened?"
It looks at you with no recognition, no attempt to even engage you in dialogue. This might be if you're trying to provoke him and get a response to figure out what happened. Would you also be like you're a quick study? Are your eyes kind of scanning him? Are you trying to pick up on clues?
Yeah.
Go ahead and roll a trait check. So for this, you're going to roll, I think your intelligence. No, probably your perception, your wisdom. So it's a modifier of it's 2d8 plus 0 for wisdom. Plus, what's your quick study? Is it 3?
3.
3
yeah.
for that. And then let me just double check. Yeah, just that 2d8 plus 3. Difficulty 9. Okay, 10. Yeah. So looking at him, again, it's clear that the brothers that have been brought in. You've read something about necromantic practices and some of the different books you've read. I think they're largely attributed to stories. You know that there's stories from this area. It used to be called the Yellow Hill District. Stories of long lost, battles and armies waging war. And there was a character named the Shrike King, who generations before, hundreds of years before, was known to have used necromancy to enslave the local populace into an undead army that he took to wage war. Kind of an infamous, like a Vlad the Impaler type. And the shrike is a bird that will impale its prey on thorns and things. The Shrike King was known to have captured young, hardy men and women, impale them on these iron spikes, and then reanimate their bodies to serve in his army. His ritual was based around that Shrike kind of theme.
And this was a real person, or is this a legend that people don't know if he's real or not? Or
I think Caleb has read of it as a legend, but like that 10 on your check kind of clicks together. Like it's kind of the area, and that's the legend that would apply here. Looking at the armor and maybe even the frescoes, you remember the great king who led the battle against the Shrike King, and as you're looking at them, you're looking at the armor, the chest wounds, you're looking at the frescoes, thinking back on even the runes that entombed this place. It kind of falls into piece that this might be where the Shrike King was left imprisoned.
And they're not advancing on me; they're just like sentry blocking me from going forward.
Clearly blocking your way, though, yeah, but not advancing.
Okay, I'm gonna shift back to the center.
Okay. As you do,
see how they react.
These two guys have kind of come forward a little bit, and as you shift to the center, they move to just kind of form a barrier, and you actually see a couple more coming from the back. A total of 6 guys now in the room, and they're basically just moving into a position to keep you from getting any deeper in. And they're all kind of holding their spears as kind of across the chest barrier.
Okay. That pink guy is shifty.
Mm-hmm.
To the extent that I can see them and recognize features, I want to kind of look at them one by one and try to commit their appearance to memory so that when I do go back, I can definitively say to certain people like, oh, yes, I saw your family member, I saw your family member, and kind of just like account for who's gone.
Roll me D6. So 4 of them, as you're looking at, 4 of them are fairly fresh, like within the last week or two since all of this happened. One of them, I think the one that's closest to you now, orange, as you kind of move fast, that over the stench, the charnel house hits you and more overpowering. There's putrefaction. Flesh is kind of sloughing off, and you see some exposed bone on his face. He's been dead for a month or more, is your best guess, not having really spent time as a medical examiner. And then the last one, the 6th one, is long dead. He's like desiccated. You think that
is that the green one or the pink one?
Let's call him Pink, the shifty one. He's got more practice at being an undead sentry, and he's long dead. So you don't think he's from the group, but the 4 at the top group, you've committed their memories, their faces to memory. You think you even know the names of Red and Blue, because their brother told you. I think they're twins. Green and Purple, you don't know their names, but you recognize that they're family to the folks that sent you here.
All right. So I'm going to back up just one more pace because this is like a hallway, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's about a 20-foot ramp leading up and out of the barrow.
I just want to move just inside the hallway so that I can't be surrounded by them. So that if they come at me, they've got to come 1 or 2 at a time instead of 6 or more around me.
Absolutely.
And I'm going to level my crossbow at orange and fire.
So as you move back, they don't really move to engage you. They do kind of fill in the gaps. I think that comes down here, and they just basically do like a phalanx. As you raise the crossbow, there's no reaction from them. They don't take cover. What's your feeling as you're preparing to fire? There's clearly no
mindfulness
of self-preservation in these guys.
So my feeling is twofold. First, this is no way to exist. You know, whatever is toying with these guys is sort of taking liberties that shouldn't be taken, and this is no way for anybody to hang on to existence. And secondly, the answers to my questions are on the other side of them, and so they're not going to let me by. I have to put them down.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think they're clearly a corruption of the natural order. You fired your crossbow, even though you haven't resolved the hit yet. Go ahead and roll a d8 for usage die. And if you roll a 1 or a 2, we're going to decrease your usage die. You still get the attack off regardless of what you roll.
Okay.
Nice. So you fire off your crossbow. You still have a quiver full of crossbow bolts in your package. Now that
should I go ahead and roll an attack, or
yeah, go ahead and roll a d20. You're going to add your dexterity modifier of 2, and you're going to add the armor class of the enemies is 7, and I think that's it. Let me just double check. And your attack bonus as a mage is 0. So you're going to roll plus 9 total. D20 plus 9.
That's not good.
So you roll an 11, and you fire off your crossbow bolt. Again, you don't exhaust the usage die, so you got plenty of bolts left in your quiver. You fire a bolt off. It goes kind of ricocheting down past him, kind of clambers off back here somewhere. You still have a fray die available. I believe you have to use it on your turn. I'll double check that, but I think you have to use it on your turn.
No, I'll go ahead and use it.
Okay, so roll a d4.
Do I add anything to the d4 or just d4?
No, just straight d4.
Come on now.
Okay, so 4. So on a 2 through 5, you deal 1 point of damage. You can designate any one of these targets to deal that damage to. They're all 1 hit die. They're all 1 hit die is equal to or lower than your level of 1. They're all 1 hit die, and you're going to deal 1 damage. So you basically choose one that you killed right now with your fray die, and then describe to me what happens with that fray as you use the magic.
I'll go orange. And I picture that it's almost like what you'd consider a traditional magic missile, where I just kind of put my hand up, and out of the palm springs like a green spark that sort of weaves around almost like homing missile style. It doesn't shoot straight at whatever it hits. It just kind of like spirals off and then maybe swings around one of the pillars and hits him.
Nice. So your crossbow bolt flies over his shoulder, and he doesn't react to that. His bolt slams into his side, and I think you hear it kind of sizzle as it gets under his armor and cooks the flesh. And he just collapses in his spot. The others come rushing forward. You can tell that, like, now that they've been attacked, they come rushing forward. It is 10 feet wide, so these two kind of get you at the very front. Pink comes in from the side, and red here. And then blue is kind of crushing in from the back, but he can't really get his spear. It's only like a normal spear. It's not like a long spear. Mm-hmm. He can't really get over the shoulders of green and purple. So you have 4 of them that are all attacking you. What they do with their attacks. What's your AC?
7, I think. 7.
Okay. So with their attacks, what they're going to roll is they have an attack bonus of 1, and they add your AC. And so they get 4 attacks coming at you. A 28 hits. There's nothing like a 20 is not a crit. It's just a guaranteed hit anyway. 26 hits.
I'm going to die.
2 hits. 16 misses. You have to get a 20 or higher. So you have 3 successful hits against you. Their damage is 1d6. They don't get any bonus damage on it. So each one of them rolls a d6. He rolls a 1. So he comes forward and he stabs at you. This is red. He kind of leans in and stabs at you. And the spearhead gets kind of tangled up in your robes, and you're able to spin out of the way of it. And do 1 point. You're going to take 2 points total. So kind of describe real quick what happens is one of them misses entirely. One of them hits you but doesn't do damage, and 2 of them kind of cut you up with their spears. What's your reaction? Is this the first time you've actually been in combat, or have you been in combat before?
No, probably this is the first time.
Okay. So yeah, you've just had a couple of spears thrust at you. Mark off 2 hit points of damage.
Okay.
And it's reset to your round.
I'm going to back up another bit to try and again bottleneck them so that they can't all get to me at once.
You can you can move and attack in the same round. Mm-hmm. So you can attack first and then back up if you'd like.
Oh, okay. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and again fire my crossbow, this time at purple.
Okay. Roll your usage die, D8. No expended bolts. You fire off without worry. Go ahead and roll your damage. Or roll your attack, I'm sorry. Another miss.
And then I'll do the fray die again, also at purple.
Okay. So you do 1 point of damage. We're going to mark purple off. Now you are welcome to run out of here to heal, and then you want to move back.
Yeah.
You're welcome to kind of abandon the fight if you want. Do you want to run further than that? Do you want to actually get out of combat, or do you want to stand there and hold them off? They'll be attacking 2 at a time because of your move there. It's basically 2 of them like in the 5 feet right in front of you, and then 2 pressing in behind them that can't get their spears to bear.
I'm going to actually go 1 more back.
They can come through that doorway 1 at a time because you left it just open enough to squeeze through.
Okay.
So if you go back that far, they're kind of pressing through 1 at a time.
Okay. I'll do that for now.
So you kind of shoot your crossbow again. It's maybe a rush shot. It flies off between them, even though they're pressing on you. You fail to hit. Pull up your little green bolt. It sizzles through purple. You take a couple steps back. They kind of swing at you as you take a step back, and you rush back to the doors. They come pressing up to the doors, and Red starts kind of puts one kind of gauntleted hand, and this is one of the young guys that you recognize, one of the brothers. Mm-hmm. Puts one gauntleted hand against the door. And he pulls himself forward, and he's kind of thrusting his spear at you as he drives through the door.
No.
For a
motherfucker.
Hits. Yeah. He comes through and he drives that spear I think right into your breastbone. You feel like maybe a rib crack. As he drives in, you take 1 more point of damage.
Son of a bitch.
As he pulls the spear out and you feel blood's pouring out and the tip is covered in blood, completely dispassionate glance. New combat round. Oh, and the others are pressing in behind him.
Okay. I'm going to do my attack. So I'm going to fire at Red with my crossbow.
If you hold off on that, if you wanted to like close the door, do like a strength check to close it while they're pressing against it, you could do that, and you can still do your fray die. But you can close the door and do your attack.
I see, because it's like an action.
Yeah, you get 1 move and 1 action basically.
Okay.
But you could try and do the fray die. You could do the fray die, and then also try to close the door.
Okay, I'll do that. That's a good. a good thought. So 1d4.
So yeah, you do 1 point of damage. So that lead guy, as he's coming through, the guy red that just stabbed you in the chest. What's it? Is it another green bolt? What do you do this time, and how does it kill him? Or do you do it with your dagger? Is it a crossbow shot to the face?
No, it's another green bolt. I put the hand up and it kind of sails past his cheek and around behind and swoops back in through the back of his head.
This is a fresh body. This is somebody who you just spoke to his brother earlier this morning. And you see his, I think there's probably almost even a moment that looks like a bulge as it comes through the back of his head and like up into his skull. And then his face just rips open. It's like the energy kind of dissipates as it pours out of his skull. He collapses to his feet in front of you. He's the one that was going to be kind of pushing against the door. So I think you're just going to do a strength check, difficulty 19, without having to have an opposed check. There's nobody really pushing against it just yet because Green will need to stumble over his body.
And so am I just rolling a d20?
It's going to be 2d8 plus your strength modifier of 0 plus a trait that might apply. Do you think that, for instance, you might be able to like grab Red's spear and use it as a lever going off of your carpentry background? You kind of know how to like apply force with levers. You mentioned using like physics and simple tools.
Right.
So that would let you roll a +2.
So 2d8 plus 2?
Yeah, difficulty of 9.
I thought you said 19 at first.
No, 9. Yeah. So as you are trying to like kind of force it closed, Green gets up there and starts pushing against it. You've gotten the door closed just a couple inches, but Green is going to have room to get through. The spear comes through kind of wildly, swinging at you a couple of times. It's not an immediate threat because he's mainly getting his shoulder against the door. Showing some intelligence to try and counter the door, even though they're not reacting to you. They're clearly not just completely stupid. You're holding against the door just a little bit. If you move, I guess their round is trying to catch up.
And Red is down, right?
Yeah. I think if you can't figure out how to get it closed immediately, you're going to have 2 of them trying to push it open, and we're going to get into some opposed strength checks. But you have kind of a round here. Basically, their round is coming up to the door and starting to try to figure out how to force it open. So their round is spent doing that. Let me get right out of the way. The 3 survivors have 2 of them have moved into place to try and push. You're not sure what Blue's doing.
Well, I'm going to do the Frey die again at the top of this round.
And again, you get to do that against any. So this time it doesn't do any damage. A 1 is 0 damage. So it still kind of flies around. It probably hits the target, but it strikes against some of that armor.
Right. And I picture that, like, I'm not directing these things. Like, I'm not controlling the circuitous path that they go on. He just kind of, like, flings them.
You let the magic out, and it goes where it feels it needs to go.
Right. Rather than use the spear as a lever, I'm going to kind of try to loop it through the chains and turn it to tighten the chains so that the door will only open so far, like it won't swing free. Does that make sense? Like if the chains are dangling, I loop it through and wrap it a few times so that the chains get more taut so the doors won't swing.
I think this would be a 2d8 plus you're going to work your intelligence in instead of your strength. So 2d8 plus 2. And then you could still use your apprentice, so +4, 2d8 plus 4. They are pushing against you now, though. I'm going to roll 2d8 plus 2. So before your difficulty was 9. You had to beat a 9 because like red was down and you were just trying to close it.
Mhm.
Now you actually have to beat their roll. So we're going to do opposed rolls. I'm getting 2d8 and then I'm getting +2 because there's 2 of them pushing against you.
Okay.
You have to beat a 7. Nice. I think you close the door, and as you cinch those chains together, you actually get like the 2 split ends of chain. As you cinch them together, the door isn't closed all the way, but the chains connect, and you feel kind of like sitting in front of a big subwoofer. You know, where you feel that bass wave go through you.
Mm-hmm.
You feel this kind of wave of power, maybe even a smell of ozone, and you hear gasps from across the door. You don't think these things were breathing while you were fighting them. They didn't have any vocalization. But you hear these kind of gasps. It sounds like maybe something's shocked on the other side, and you feel them kind of get blasted back away from the door. Something you did in like reconnecting that chain repulsed them back.
Is the chain physically repaired now, or is it?
No, it's being kind of held together by your the spear that you looted and kind of stuck.
Okay.
If you were to remove the spear, it would fall apart again.
Okay, I didn't know if it had like reformed itself magically. Okay.
You, I think, as you kind of inspect where it joined, getting the links to like reconnect seems to have recompleted the whatever enchantment was wrought by these glyph chains. And you think if you pull that spear out or otherwise disconnect the chains again, because the chains are physically broken, like once they pull apart again, the spell will go away again.
Got it. Well, in that case, I'm going to back up, I don't know, a good 50 feet, 30, 40, 50 feet away from the door.
I think as you're backing up, you hear one of them kind of come in and like push against that door, and again you feel that thrum go out, and it gets repulsed again, and you hear it go flying back.
Okay. I want to bandage my wounds while I have a moment to think.
So when you bandage, you're going to heal 2 of your 3 lost hit points. The other ways to recover your wounds, this is in the handbook on injury and healing on page 15 in the QuickStart. 1 night's rest will heal a hit point. An entire day resting with competent care, you get 2 hit points. There are also options for magical healing and healing potions, things like that. And the way healing potions work is a little tricky. It's usually it's like a d6 plus 1, where you are guaranteed at least 1 hit point and at most 2 from hit points. And then you can get like 2d6 plus 2 healing potions, things like that.
Got it.
It's getting pretty late. I don't know if we're at a point where we'd want to kind of call it and just pick up getting ready to go back into the dungeon here.
That's fine. Yeah, I'm pretty tired from not sleeping much last night. So
let me know, kind of think about the system. I think we can have a lot of fun with this.
Mm-hmm.
I'll start putting together some ideas for the sandbox type thing. I'll come up with Cotton Hill, maybe another couple of towns. And then I have a few ideas on how to share documents if we don't do Roll20. One is we could use Roll20 like this. If we want to do map-based dungeons and stuff, Roll20 might be a good option if I spend the time doing dynamic lighting, which is worth it if we do that. If we want to do more concept maps where we don't necessarily have to pay attention to each individual hall, you know, we can hand wave some of that. I'll still describe you're going through a tunnel or whatever, but we wouldn't necessarily have to have maps that we'd share.
Mm-hmm.
That'd be one way to do it, more theater of the mind type stuff. Options include doing Roll20 for campaign. There's also a really cool site called Obsidian Portal that I used to have a subscription to run Dungeon World Online. It was like $40 for a year. I'd gladly rebuy another year of that. And I could do maps, wikis, NPCs that you run into. We could actually organize it, give you rights to write stuff on it too. and it would be like a campaign log that we could keep.
Is that something? Yeah, I mean, is that something that you would use for other play as well, or?
Yeah, if I resubscribe to it, I think I can have like unlimited campaigns, and it's $40 a year. Like it's pretty good price. I think I would actually unlock the old Dungeon World campaign again. I could, as long as I didn't dump the data, I could kind of show you what we did with that.
Okay.
And see if that's the sort of thing that that we'd want to do. But I'd like to have some way to kind of manage what we're doing here.
Sure.
If we build a little bit of a world and play here, and then we decide to, you want a different character to run around with, we can jump into another aspect of the same world, or could be a lot of fun.
Is this the kind of thing that you'd want to sort of take turns running so that you get a chance to play as well, or what? I mean,
we could do that if you like the system. That would definitely be a thing to do. It's also, I think, a game where we could pretty quickly, once Jessica's schedule is back, if she wanted to join us in this sort of adventure, I think it'd be pretty easy to work in another character in Scarlet Heroes, or to transfer everything over to Godbound. We would be able to look at using Godbound for a system, and there you'd play kind of demigod characters more explicitly.
Okay.
But I think for one-on-one, I was really impressed with what I read. Kevin does great stuff. Just don't look at this particular adventure in the book.
Oh,
no. QuickStart. But it'd be pretty easy. Like, you'll recognize it quickly, and you can avoid it.
Yeah, is this the one in the QuickStart, or is this one that it? Okay.
Yeah, the Iron Strike.
Okay, I'll make sure not to look at that one.
Very good. Okay. And then this game was developed to easily merge with old, like when we first started playing D&D, it was AD&D second edition. Stuff from then and before. Any of those old adventures, I don't know if you ever did any kind of pre-written modules at those times, like House of Strahd, Temple for Elemental Evil. If any of those were like a load of fun, we could even pick those up, and I'll find a PDF. I'm sure they're available somewhere. It's designed to pretty quickly translate all of those bits of information into this system, so that you are as powerful as a party back at that time. Basically, if we find an adventure for like first level partiers, you alone should be able to basically do what a party of first level people would have done. And
unless you're a wizard with no hit points.
Unless you're a wizard with no hit points. I think that'll not be too much of a problem for long. We're going to be getting XP and things. And actually, as you back out of the and we get to the end of the game, let's just do the end of session questions I wrote real quick. And I wrote these questions. Normally what they say is that at the end of every session, you should reward 1 XP. And then if a GM wants to see quicker advancement and the player wants quicker advancement, you can talk about a second one. So I wrote these 2 questions to pretty much guarantee 1 XP per session. And then I tried to frame a second question to encourage the kind of play type that I think we both want, where you go big or you go home.
Right.
Succeeded or failed, or we learned something cool about the character.
Okay.
So that's why I made that second question the way it was. So first question, did you undertake a heroic challenge this session?
I mean, I attacked undead people, so I guess.
And this one, to start it off, I threw you at the front of the dungeon, and it was implicit you already agreed. As we complete this adventure, I will. I'm basically going to do like the old World of Warcraft. Like there's the bulletin board. There'll be 3 or 4 quests to take you out to places.
Sure.
And then you can either explore the countryside at random or seek out particular opportunities. I'll try and tailor them to your character.
Let's not do the one where I have to collect a poop.
Let's do oh god, Snivel's Claw outside of Duratar. Let's do that one 4 or 5 times. So did you succeed gloriously or fail spectacularly, or did we learn something about you?
I think I failed pretty spectacularly. I almost died.
Rushed in. Where angels fear to tread, like a fool.
And something to learn interesting about him is that he doesn't wear like typical wizard robes. He's just dressed like in normal kind of traveling pants and shirt and like kind of farmer work shoes. He doesn't look like a wizard at all. He just looks like a, I don't know, thin, not so hardy young man.
Okay. So there's no affectations of being this powerful magic user.
Right.
I think I also learned about him. You took the time to study the undead before you attacked them to see like what families wanted to speak to. I think that was an interesting idea that these aren't simple undead. They're not between you and loot. You never asked what Callum was promised by the village. You kind of accepted the idea that he was here as part of like, is this part of the plague or is there something else going on? So those things will kind of snowball into understanding who he is. Question number 3, and the question might be they haven't.
Right.
How have your goals, instincts, or beliefs been reinforced, challenged, or changed this session?
I don't know that they have. It was such a quick encounter.
You did invoke at least your belief that there's an order to the world and like that this is contrary to that order.
Yeah.
So we tickled it. We didn't really change it or reinforce it.
And I mean, I suppose that if he's headed here to find out what's going on with the plagues, and there's this sort of corruption of life that's happening, that could, I don't know, reinforce that he's on the right track.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the things behind the plagues might be behind this barrow. Very good. And then what are your plans for tomorrow?
To lick my wounds and go back in there.
Okay. And so when we get back to it, we'll even hand wave to the next morning where you've rested, you've gotten that last hit point back, and you can prepare a new spell or take the same one in and jump back at it.
Okay.
You also have 2 XP. We're already outside of QuickStart material.
Hey.
You want to do the level up real quick before you cancel?
Sure. So I gained a level?
Yep.
I almost died?
So it takes 2 XP to get to level 2, and then it'll take 3 to get level 3, so you'll need 5 total.
Okay.
So increase your XP to level 2.
Got it.
Magic users add 1/3 of a point to your attack bonus.
Ugh. So now my attack bonus is 2 1/3.
It's just 1/3 because it's a 0. Your 2 is your dex bonus, and but your attack bonus is 0. Your class, you're at 1/3. It always rounds to the nearest whole number. So at third level,
0.
You'll be 2/3, and it'll round up to 1. But then it'll be 3 more levels before it's 1 2/3 when it rounds up to 2. So
I see.
So yeah,
I should really make this say 1/3.
Yeah, you're at 1/3. And I don't like the character sheet they have in Roll20. That's something that's been programmed and added to it.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe I'll do a Google Drive sheet that we can use a little bit easier. You add 1 spell to your spell book from any spell level that you're able to cast. So you can use the big book that has all the spells in it and add 1 more spell to your spell book. You'll also see
that.
There,
so I'll look at the spells before we play next time. Because I closed that window.
Right before the spells, let's see, there's somewhere. Okay.
See if I can find it.
Make a note, it's before the spell book, you'll see cleric spells, and before that, you'll see where it just talks about red sorcery and spellcasting generally.
Mm-hmm.
At second level, you're going to prepare 2 first level spells per day instead of 1. At third level, you get 2 first, 1 second. So you do get spell progression. You can prepare the same spell twice or 2 separate spells once. Magic users, you will add 2 hit points plus your con bonus to your max hit points.
So I have 2 more hit points now?
Mm-hmm. And I would go ahead and add them in. You don't need to heal those. It's not a wound that you incurred.
Sweet.
And then you gain 1 additional trait point with each level. Would there be any traits involved with coming up against undead, protecting, trying to be a hero to the farm communities? Do you want a little bit of time to think about it? Do you want to dedicate something tonight?
Let me think about it, and we'll resolve it at the beginning of next session. My frayed eye doesn't ever change, does it? Is it always 1d4?
Let me double check. There might be a case where it doesn't increase in die, but it might increase the number of dice you roll. Let's see. No, it looks like it's stuck at 1d4. What you would want to do to increase the fray die would be to multi-class into another class with a higher die type. I think fighter has the highest, which is a d8. Let me just double check that. And if you were to get a d8, then you'd have the option. If you rolled a 6, 7, or 8, you would do 2 points of damage with your fray die, and you could split that amongst 2 characters. Oh, and something I should have been clear about when you're deciding when to use your spell or not.
Mm-hmm.
If you deal excess damage even with your crossbow bolt, let's say you were to shoot and somehow do like 2 points of damage,
Mm-hmm.
you can't with the dice on a. Well, no, you could roll a 6. No, you roll a d4 because you're a wizard, so you roll a d4. If you were to do 2 points, it can spill over to any other character that you reasonably would have hit in combat.
Okay.
And so let's say you did 2 points with your crossbow somehow. You would do 2 points, and what we would decide is that you had continued shooting into another enemy. But because we're using usage die instead of tracking numbers of crossbow bolts you're carrying, we wouldn't continue to deplete the, if you,
Right.
whatever happened to usage die, you got off as many shots as it took to do the damage that you dealt. So
that's cool.
With your spells, if you have a room full of 1 hit die creatures and you have a spell that could do like 4 points of damage and you don't want to use it because you're worried about like killing just one target and wasting it, if you do 4 points of damage, it will spill over to any other creatures that could have been hit by that spell at your choosing. You'll nominate who's going to die. So don't be afraid of AoE. Yeah. So I'm enjoying this. I'm really looking forward to getting further into the madness with you with this. And read a little bit on the setting. If you like the setting, we can kind of go with it, or else we can just do our own. I'm kind of torn. I generally prefer to do our own.
Yeah.
But there's some kind of cool stuff in there. Maybe we can pick and choose what we want to do.
Okay. I will look it over this week. I should have some time.
Excellent, excellent. Well, I hope everything goes well tomorrow. I'm happy to know you'll be working with Cassie again. That'd be good.
Thank you. Me too. I'll keep you posted.
Excellent.
And tell Jeff